So, so, so to all the people that would call me a clown, buffoonish, say I'm silly, who is this kid? I walk with the faith, because mama told me so. I'm Martin Fitzgerald Lawrence.
They didn't just break Martin Lawrence, they rebuilt him. For years, the public accepted the redemption arc. A comedian who burned too hot, spiraled too hard, then resurfaced smiling, sanitized, and bankable, cashing a reported $170 million paycheck while playing a loud, harmless grandmother in a wig. That story held until last night, when sources close to Katt Williams dropped a claim that doesn't just challenge the narrative, it detonates it. According to Williams, Hollywood didn't save Martin. It replaced him. No euphemisms, no riddles. The Martin Lawrence audiences see today isn't the man who ran into Los Angeles traffic in 1996 screaming that assassins were after him. He isn't the performer who collapsed inside a plastic suit in triple-digit heat with a reported 107-degree body temperature. He isn't the star who forced Fox to rewrite contracts mid-season after a co-star filed a $5 million harassment lawsuit. That version disappeared. What came after, Williams claims, was something else entirely, quieter, compliant, rebuilt to fit the machine that couldn't afford another liability. Not a comeback, a reconstruction.
There are stories about you. I want to run some of these by you and see if you can tell me, confirm or deny or whatever you want to do.
The real problem is that the original Martin Lawrence left warnings everywhere. 2 concealed weapon arrests in a single year, a live television monologue so unfiltered it was quietly erased, a smiling wedding photo with the woman who would sue him just 5 months later, and a coma no one was ever allowed to explain. The cracks become impossible to ignore when you notice that the man who once improvised entire episodes of his own show now fixes his eyes on teleprompters, while Will Smith gently guides him through interviews like a handler protecting a valuable asset. This isn't the story of a faded star. It's the story of a machine that decides who's allowed to be dangerous and who gets neutralized. When Martin Lawrence collapsed on the pavement in Sherman Oaks that August afternoon in 1999, the narrative was already prepared. 100-degree heat, a plastic suit, a body temperature spiking to 107, heat exhaustion, a tragic mistake by a comedian pushing too far. Paramedics found him convulsing, his system failing, and by morning the headlines framed it as a cautionary tale about excess and self-destruction. But men like Martin don't simply fold. Not after surviving lawsuits, scandals, network threats, and years of live-wire defiance. Not after months of unexplained silence. And not right before a perfectly timed resurrection that just happened to involve a dress, a wig, and a character safe enough to make everyone comfortable. People close to the situation say the coma wasn't an accident. It was the final step in a long process, one designed to break him down completely so he could be rebuilt into something quieter, controllable, and profitable. And the most unsettling part isn't what they did to Martin Lawrence. It's the realization that the same process may already be underway for others who haven't broken yet.
I went home, I said, Mom, people lashing out, and usually I don't say nothing. Mm-hmm. You know, I want to, go to these because I'm from the neighborhood. Yeah. But my mother said, baby, you you know how it is. From the neighborhood, you won't wait outside the door. Well, when they coming outside, you know? So my mother said, nah, baby, think of the...
The first real red flag surfaced 5 years before Martin Lawrence's collapse, on a Saturday Night Live stage in 1994, when he ripped up his approved monologue and went completely rogue. The jokes were crude, unfiltered, and exactly the kind of raw material that made him a star, but not the kind that survives network politics. NBC cut the broadcast mid-show, issued an on-air apology, and banned Lawrence for life, a punishment so extreme it immediately raised questions, especially when other comedians with far bigger controversies were quietly welcomed back years later. If this was just about offensive humor, why was the footage scrubbed from the archives like evidence in a criminal case? Insiders say the ban wasn't about the jokes at all. It was about defiance, about a star refusing to stay in his lane, the one sin Hollywood never forgives. Then came the guns. 2 arrests in 1996, both involving firearms, both dismissed with explanations that never quite added up. First, Lawrence ran into traffic on Ventura Boulevard with a loaded pistol in his pocket, shouting that powerful forces were trying to silence him, only to be restrained, evaluated, and released under the vague label of exhaustion. Months later, he was caught with a concealed Beretta at Burbank Airport. 2 incidents, 2 weapons, and no real consequences for a man supposedly at the height of his career, fresh off a hit sitcom and negotiating 8-figure studio deals. Powerful men don't carry guns into jogging trails or airport security unless something is very wrong, or they believe something is coming. And then there's Tisha Campbell. His longtime co-star, creative partner, and on-screen love interest stood beside him through Def Comedy Jam, The Rise of Martin, and even the SNL ban. They laughed through interviews, played TV's most beloved couple, and posed smiling together at her wedding in August 1996. 5 months later, she filed a $5 million lawsuit accusing Lawrence of harassment and creating a hostile work environment. A move that didn't just sever their relationship but derailed the show's final season and ensured they never shared a scene again. What's being whispered now is that the timing wasn't accidental. The lawsuit landed just as Lawrence was negotiating his next massive deal, just as networks were weighing renewals, just as the public incidents were painting him as unstable. Industry sources claim it wasn't just personal. It was strategic, a perfectly timed move to clip his wings before he flew beyond anyone's control.
And Martin stopped me on the first day, and he was like, hey, come here. And I said, what? He said, I just want you to know I love you, man. Right? And I was like, yeah, you know, Allah, brother, Allah. He said, no, right here. And I looked, and he was like, I love you, man.
And then there's the silence. After the lawsuit, after the guns, after the wedding photo that now reads less like coincidence and more like staging, Martin Lawrence vanished. No interviews, no press tours, no attempt to reclaim the narrative. Just a quiet removal while the industry decided what to do with a man who had become unpredictable. The collapse in 1999 wasn't the beginning of his unraveling. It was the end of the first act, the moment everything before it had been steering toward, because when he woke up, something had changed. The comedian who once improvised entire episodes now leaned on teleprompters. The performer who used to command rooms now let others, most visibly Will Smith, guide him through public moments. And the rebel who built a career on defiance returned, playing a character whose entire joke was submission. That wasn't a comeback, critics argue, it was a reconstruction. The dress wasn't just a role. It was a declaration, a way to turn a threat into a mascot and a disruptor into a punchline. And the most unsettling part is that it worked. Big Mama's House made $170 million. Audiences laughed, studios cashed in, and Martin Lawrence emerged as a legend in name only, wealthy, celebrated, and visibly diminished in ways money doesn't explain. The cracks are still there if you know where to look. The way he clings to handlers on red carpets, the vacant pause when a teleprompter fails, the contrast with the man audiences remember from 1994, when he was still dangerous. That's when the theory takes its sharpest turn, that the coma wasn't the end of the story, but the moment the industry believed it had one. Except stories like this don't end cleanly. They leave witnesses, people who remember the Ventura Boulevard footage before it disappeared, people who noticed the guns weren't a phase but a warning, people who saw the wedding photo, the lawsuit, the breakdown, and sensed a pattern. And when Katt Williams said the quiet part out loud, that they didn't just break Martin Lawrence, they replaced him, it resonated because it fit an old formula. Look at the history, critics say. When a black comedian becomes too sharp, too influential, too uncontrollable, the industry neutralizes him with parody, spectacle, and domestication. The dress becomes tradition, not comedy. What makes Martin's case stand out is the timing. Why the transformation came after the coma, not before. Sources have even claimed the script was waiting before he fully recovered, as if someone already knew what version of him would emerge. If that's true, then the dress wasn't humiliation, it was ownership. A way to take one of comedy's most volatile forces and make him safe, sellable, and small. And the question hanging in the air isn't whether this interpretation is uncomfortable. It's what happens when more people start noticing the pattern and realize it didn't stop with him.
What I do, doing Big Mama and characters like that, Shanae or whatever, these are strong black women, you know, and I'm a comedian, you know, and I'm not above playing a character, putting on a dress or whatever, because I'm in tune with my manhood, you know, so I know who I am.
But the dress was only the most visible chain. The real work happened years earlier, in the quiet dismantling of Martin Lawrence's power. Start with Martin, 11 million weekly viewers, a cultural force, a platform that let him shapeshift into everything from Shanina Jenkins to Otis the Drunk, all under his control. Then watch how the pressure points appear. First, the permanent SNL ban, a message disguised as punishment. Then the gun arrests, framed publicly as instability rather than context. Then Tisha Campbell's lawsuit, timed at the exact moment his leverage with the network was peaking. Each incident chipped away at the same thing: his credibility, his insurability, his autonomy. Insiders have long claimed the network didn't simply end Martin. They engineered its collapse, forcing Lawrence and Campbell to film separately, draining the show of the chemistry that made it untouchable. What viewers saw as an awkward final season was, behind the scenes, a controlled demolition. By the time the coma hit, Lawrence wasn't just a man in medical crisis. He was a liability the industry had already prepared to move past. And then there was the money. $170 million for Big Mama's house. $20 million per film at his peak. Endorsement deals with Nike, Pepsi, McDonald's, the kind of wealth that's supposed to buy freedom. Instead, critics argue it bought compliance. The checks didn't fund creative control or risk-taking. They funded obedience. Because once you're making that kind of money, you don't ask for final cut. You don't improvise. You don't push. You hit your marks, read the lines, smile for the cameras. And if you forget, there's always a reminder. Like Will Smith's hand on Lawrence's shoulder during press tours when questions drift too close, or the teleprompter at award shows. Blinking words that Lawrence stares at like they're written in a language he no longer speaks. In that reading, the money wasn't the reward. It was the leash.
I'm having a good
In a good
time.
way, it feels like the first
in
time.
a good way. And the people are coming out, my fans, and showing me so much love. I can't ask for them.
But here's what they didn't count on. The pattern doesn't stop with Martin Lawrence. It repeats every time. Eddie Murphy's Norbit didn't arrive at random. It followed his rawest era, right when the jokes cut too close and the industry needed him safer. Jamie Foxx's Wanda showed up as he transitioned from dangerous stand-up to Oscar-approved prestige. Tyler Perry's Medea isn't just a character. It's a brand. An entire career wrapped in something familiar, controllable, and endlessly marketable. The dress isn't a punchline. It's a tradition. And the most unsettling part is that it works. Audiences laugh, studios profit, and the men under the wigs learn the lesson quickly. Stay in line. Because the alternative isn't failure, it's erasure. What deepens the unease is the silence surrounding Martin's own story. No full accounting from Tisha Campbell about what really happened on set. No explanation from Dwayne Martin about a lawsuit that reshaped a hit show. No raw Ventura Boulevard footage. No unedited SNL monologue. No transparent medical records from the coma. These aren't random omissions. They're gaps where uncomfortable truths might surface if anyone pushed hard enough. And those who do, like Katt Williams, are dismissed as unstable or attention-hungry. But patterns don't disappear just because they're ignored. You see it in the way Lawrence's eyes go flat mid-interview, in how only his daughters still interact with him like he's fully present, in how the fire that once defined his comedy never quite comes back. The beneficiaries are obvious: the studios, the franchises, the sequels that kept printing money, but the real point runs deeper. This isn't about humor or humiliation. It's about control, about proving that no matter how big you get, how beloved you are, or how much you earn, the system can always pull you back into shape. The dress is just the most visible symbol. The real work happens in the contracts, the NDAs, the deal structures that keep you one misstep away from losing everything. After the coma, Lawrence didn't evolve, he was redirected. No more dangerous stand-up, no more sharp edges, just safe roles, sequels, voice work, and nostalgia plays. Not a comeback, but a carefully lit retirement disguised as success.
Past life, no, but the Will that I know now, I love.
Yeah.
You know, he's just a good brother.
No.
You know,
But the most damning part of this story isn't what was done to Martin Lawrence. It's what's still being done to everyone who came after him. Kevin Hart learned the limit the moment a single joke cost him the Oscars. And when he returned smaller, safer, polished for corporate comfort. Dave Chappelle chose exile over compromise, walking away from millions and spending years labeled unstable and difficult for refusing to surrender control. Even Tracy Morgan, A comedian whose career was launched by Lawrence's early support, adapted quickly, learning when to joke and when to fall in line. The message has never changed. You can be funny, but don't be dangerous. You can be successful, but never untouchable. You can exist in Hollywood, but only on terms they define. That's where Martin Lawrence's story stops being about one man and starts exposing the machinery behind the industry itself. Because if someone with his talent, his leverage, his audience could be neutralized, then no one is truly immune. The coma wasn't just a personal collapse, it was a signal flare. A warning shot that everyone else understood immediately. Look at the aftermath. Eddie Murphy retreated into safety, Jamie Foxx leaned into respectability, Tyler Perry built an empire on predictability. The system doesn't just punish rebellion, it rewards obedience, and the dress is only the most visible symbol of the bargain. This was never about a rough patch or bad decisions. It was about an industry that has mastered the art of sanding down its sharpest voices and turning threats into mascots. The real question isn't what happened to Martin Lawrence, it's how many others went through the same process without us noticing. And who's next? Because the machine never stops, it just updates its targets. And if we don't learn to recognize the pattern, we'll keep watching it happen in real time, mistaking compliance for success and silence for peace.